Hi Sequels friends, welcome to day 6 of Vlogvember, and today we're going to talk about why I became a reseller. Hi Sequels friends, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Heather and I'm a part-time reseller across various online platforms, and I love to share my reselling journey here with you on YouTube. Let's get into today's video. Why did I become a reseller? This was an interesting question to ask because I just feel like I've always been somewhat of a reseller, and I've always definitely have been a thrifty gal. Like when I was young, I remember going to visit my grandparents in Orlando, and my grandfather would give me $5 and take us to Flea World, and everybody would always be flabbergasted by how many things I came back with. My brother was so smart. He would spend his money on something worthwhile and spend all $5, and I would try to get as many things as possible for my money. Even when we would do school shopping, the same thing. I've always been that way. And then when I was in high school, I was in high school in the early 90s. And if you know anything about that time, especially with how popular it is now, or you grew up during that time, you know the 90s were basically the 70s when it came to fashion. And I was all about vintage fashion. I thrifted like crazy. My homecoming dresses were all thrifted. My prom dresses were all thrifted. And I was known for wearing 1970s psychedelic dresses to school. I just if I could have been anywhere near as cool as Lady Miss Care, I was trying. You know what I'm saying? Loved everything about vintage fashion. And like I said, I've always had a passion for thrifting, but it really took me until I got to high school aged before I really become obsessed with the fashion of different eras, learning more about fashion of different eras. One of the school projects I did was all about the fashion of a particular time period, like 1400s to whatever, just because the idea of fashion throughout the years is fascinating to me. So much so that I was originally going to go to school for fashion, but changed my mind because I thought that wasn't a realistic goal to have. And so I went to school to pursue a psychology degree, which is funny because while I was in school, I had a communications class and you had to do a how-to, and the only thing I could think of that I could actually teach anybody how to do was to thrift. So my whole presentation was how to start thrifting. And at the end of the presentation, I said, and my whole outfit just cost me $10. And I remember the classroom just giggling about it. By the time I had graduated, was doing some research work in psychology and was like, I don't want to sit around and listen to people's problems all day. I don't think this is going to be a good fit for me. Started to go back, getting out those college books, you know, of what's your career path. I took so many freaking tests. And I finally decided upon a career that would let you travel and you could make good money. Well, back then, but that's a whole nother conversation. You could make good money, and it had to do with fashion, and that was being a retail buyer. So I applied for an assistant retail buying job and ended up getting it. And for the next decade plus, I was a retail buyer, and I was still thrifting on the side. I was shopping on the side. It really excited me to understand the retail consumer. And then I met my partner, Brent, who is also a thrifty person. He loves to thrift, which of course, because how else would we be together? But also he may be the only person that I know that is cheaper than me and appreciates a good deal as much as I do. So it ends up being almost 20 years ago when I started flipping things. I remember we sold Brent's car, and I'm pretty positive that was one of the first things we ever sold on Craigslist. And it was like, we didn't even think we were going to get hardly any money for it, and we did. And then we got excited, like, ooh, what else can we sell? And by this time I had already moved and bought my first house, and I had accumulated things. I had a nice job, I had a house, I've accumulated things. And by this time I had started a new buying job for a furniture store. So now I was all involved every day in what the trends are and seeing cool new furniture pieces and all sorts of furniture. So now I wanted to redo my entire house. Well, do I want to spend all that money? No, I don't. So once we sold the car on Craigslist, I started looking around the house and thinking, I wonder what I could sell and how much of it I could sell to make some money to get new things. I don't like this overstuffed rolled arm sofa. I want more of a mid-century clean line sofa. How much is that going to cost me, and how much money do I need to make? So that is when we started flipping on Craigslist. Mostly we were just flipping things from around the house. I also had a furniture buying job where I had access to seconds and damaged pieces that I could fix up, and I could flip those. And then we started to look around and thrift things that we knew we could flip, because at this time we were living in St. Pete, Florida, and we have a passion for mid-century furniture. And the thing I miss the most about Florida is how much mid-century stuff you could find. And during that time, it was ripe for the flipping. So not too long after I had met Brent, when I met him, he was working insurance and was also a trained chef, but he had this passion for glass blowing on the side. So being that I was a buyer and really into selling things and finding the right product for the right consumer, I encouraged him to try to do a side hustle with his glass business. Well, just a few years later, we end up deciding that we're going to both quit our day jobs and we're going to move to North Carolina, where price of living was lower up here at that time. So we decided to quit our day jobs and we were going to move to North Carolina to pursue working full-time for the glass business. Now, before we did that, we ended up downsizing significantly, probably at least 50% of our stuff, and we sold it all on Craigslist. Somewhere around that time, Brent's cousin had told, I was doing a lot of thrifting things, sewing them, thrift flipping them, or adjusting them and changing them, and sharing that with my Facebook friends. And Brent's cousin had seen that and said, hey, I think you should tell Heather about Poshmark. I'm selling some stuff on there and she might want to sell her thrift flips on there. So I wasn't confident enough about my sewing skills to sell my thrift flips, but I did have some things in my closet that I wasn't wearing, and so I decided to put those on Poshmark and flip them, and instantaneously had success. Then several of my friends ended up giving me things. They cleaned out their closets, they had their friends clean out their closets, and they all started giving me things to sell. And sure enough, within just a short amount of time, I was doing consignment for some of those friends. So I started to realize that not only am I passionate about thrifting, not only does this kind of feed that fashion buyer side of me that I had no longer was engaging in daily because I was working for the glass business. Because of those things, I was like, I decided to go after this. I created a storefront name thanks to my Facebook friends who gave me a bunch of ideas. I created a logo. I said, this is my business name. I'm going to be a reseller now. I went out thrifting specifically with the intent solely to flip it. And then shortly after, I started a YouTube page to help make sure I got the dang thing done. And then I slowly started to learn how to cross-list across other platforms. And within not too long of a time period, I was making about $1,500 to $2,000 take home a month. And I was like, this is great. I have the ability to scale this business however I see fit. I still continue to look at jobs, even though there's no real buying jobs in my area, just because buying is a passion of mine. But I'm kind of wary about going back to that business because I don't like the way that retail is run now. I like a customer-centric focused business. I like sustainability. I don't like all of the fast fashion stuff, but I still have it in my head like, I like working out of the house, working with others on a common goal. And so when a job opportunity came up at a furniture store here that was sustainability focused, I took it. And as with most jobs, you're promised one thing, partway through something else happens, and I ended up taking a promotion, and the work-life balance that I was promised was non-existent. And my reselling business tanked. And that's when I really started to have a conversation with myself about, should I be working for somebody else or should I be focused on my reselling business? And that's when I came back to, I am always going to focus on my reselling business. I'm always going to focus on our glass business. I'm going to make that our primary goals. Those are jobs that we can have post-retirement age. Those jobs we can do forever. And I'm only going to take on any other jobs if it's a right fit. If it's sustainability focused, if they understand a work-life balance, hopefully if I can work remotely a lot, not the corporate rigmarole BS. And so that's when I decided to quit that job. And since then, you guys have seen me trying to build back up my business, which was slowly starting to happen. And then Hurricane Helene hit and we're starting all over again. Pretty much why I identify now and consider myself a reseller. So I became a reseller because I have a passion for clothing. I have a passion for retail. I have a customer-centric approach to those things, and I have a passion for vintage and sustainable living. My favorite thing is to figure out trend forecasting. I love trying to predict what customers are going to do next. Predicting that and getting it right is just like, gives me total excitement. I love the financial aspect of things, but I also love the creative aspect. And I especially love the hunt. The scavenging is finding, especially as I get older, that traditional corporate settings, the ethics of big business does not match my long-term goals. So because of all those things, reselling just seems like the natural fit for me. And I think it's important to focus on a business that I have total control over and to make sure that that business always exists, whether it's in making a few $100s a month to making a few $1,000s a month to hopefully one day even becoming a full-time business. Because I think it's important for you to have your own nest egg that you have total control over. You know the amount of time you put into it is going to depend on what you get out of it, and you never know what's going to happen. You never know what's going to happen with a certain business, with a certain job, and this is your homegrown thing. So all of those things are why I ended up becoming what I consider a reseller and identifying with my career path currently. When people ask me what I do, I say I'm a reseller. So all that, I would love to hear from you. Please let me know why you became a reseller. And I hope you enjoyed this little insight into my background and journey. And this is a great time to bring up, if this sparks any other questions you may have about me, please remember I am doing that AMA, Ask Me Anything question and answer at the end as a grand finale to my Vlogvember. So if you have any questions you'd like to ask me, you can either use the community tab or drop them in the bottom of any YouTube video I post throughout this month, and I will certainly answer them then. Don't forget my Whatnot show, if you are still around. First ever Whatnot show, oh God help me, is tonight at 7 o'clock. And it's all vintage focus, and starting bids are just $5. I am trying to clear out of stuff, get some money in to go out and do some new thrifting. So if you are looking for things for yourself or your reselling business, it might be worthwhile for you to pop in. Of course, I will drop that link below. Thank you guys so much for watching and for your support, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye guys.